I cried a little bit. I died a little bit to be in love.
I just thought I heard a Greek country western singer. Where was that?
Okay, buddy. You ready, partner?
Yeah.
He was born ready. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Enters in Heartland. We are so grateful to Pat Enters with John Dodds, the Packers savant. I'm Tom Pippins, and you are listening and watching the Tom Pippins Show with John Dodds. If you Google that, you can get to us. Also, the Tom Pippins Show or TomPippins.com. We're all about Packers. We're Packer-centric. We'll talk Brewers when we need to. Giannis, the Bucks, the whole ball of wax. But right now, everybody's talking Packers, of course, and the upcoming draft. But since we last talked, whoa, Goody, he made good with a big splash, John, in free agency, picking up 4 key players. How do these players impact the needs of the green and gold?
Well, Pip, it was surprising. There were the Packers came into the offseason $44 million under the cap. So they signed 4 free agents. They spent the money. They have $13 million left on the cap. $10 million of that is allocated to the upcoming draft. So there's only $3 million more.
Ted Thompson would. Oh, what's he thinking? I wonder. My goodness.
Well, Ted Thompson was funny. Ted Thompson did sign Charles Woodson, and he had to pay 2 times the market rate to get him from Tampa. That's what Woodson told him. And Woodson, Aaron Rodgers tells a story where Woodson came kicking and screaming to Green Bay, didn't want to be there, whined about being there. And then the Packer defensive secondary kind of took Woodson under his wing, and he learned how to be a professional, how to look at film, and he changed completely. So the Packers basically signed a Hall of Famer as a free agent. So he did that with Woodson, and he also signed Julius Peppers. Julius Peppers, the Bears mostly thought that Julius Peppers was washed up, but the Bears would use him 90 to 99% of the time, and he got tired at the end of the year because he was 35 years old. The Packers used him in small doses and in a rotation, got a lot out of him. So Ted Thompson had really hit more of a free agent, had more of a free agent impact than people think.
He hit a couple of homers, is what you're saying.
He hit some big time homers with especially with Woodson and then with Peppers.
And I love the story you've told about Al Harris mentoring him, and then Mike McCarthy trusting him to go do his own thing and working out. You don't have to be here, and all. So it's a great story. But let's talk about these free agents. Za'Darius Smith, Preston Smith, you get a couple of edge rushers. You have Adrian Amos from the Bears, a safety, and Billy Turner, as you've said, O-line, he could be a key player. These players seem to be approaching their prime. They're young guys, right, 25, 26, 27 years old. Can you talk about them, again, as they impact the needs that people want to hear about from you?
Sure. Interesting signings. Knowledge is power. And what they tried to do, I think, there's an uncertainty with free agency. You pay top dollar. All it takes is one owner or one general manager to bid that price up. And so when you bring a free agent in, you're going to be paying top market dollar. So what you do is you try to get as much as you can to eliminate the unknown. Sometimes if somebody is young, a young Clay Matthews is signed by the Packers and extended. An older Clay Matthews has some luggage with him. He's maybe injury prone, not as maybe who knows. There's not Matthews is like this, but you find older free agents are locker room lawyers. There might be reasons why teams are letting them go. So you have to do your homework, and each one of these, there's some type of tie that the Packers coaching staff or scouting staff had to them.
They liked Za'Darius Smith coming out of school, didn't they?
They liked him a lot, and Kirk Olivedati, the new linebackers coach, coached him at Baltimore. Baltimore had the number 1 defense last year. Just in the last 3 years of watching Packer opponents, the Ravens by far had the most impressive defense. I think that's the defense. Bill Polian mentioned that when they hired Pettin as defensive coordinator, that the Ravens and the Rex Ryan system is what the Packers are going to look at. That is big defensive linemen in the middle to stop the run. You got great cornerbacks that can disguise defenses, and then you get pass rush from linebackers and defensive ends who are hybrids. And what the Packers did not have that at all, because Nick Perry was hurt, and Clay Matthews is getting long in the tooth. But he made comments this week in the paper, at least, that Pettine's defense didn't fit him like Capers did.
I was still hoping they'd bring him inside, and maybe briefly, if you'll touch on it. I'm not getting you off track now, and I'm supposed to keep us on track on our video podcast here. Again, we are at Enters in Heartland. Tom Pipins with John Dodds, the Packers savant. We have Brent, we have Mike. We're a team, and we just love doing this Packers video podcast for you. You can catch us, the Tom Pipins Show with John Dodds. Just Google that, or TomPippins.com. Clay Matthews going to play for the Rams at Randall Cobb, Dallas. Briefly, let's pay him homage, okay?
Clay Matthews was a terrific player. In 2009, they drafted him.
Went up, correct?
They went up and got him. And this is kind of ironic how Brett Favre impacted acquiring Clay Matthews. And Brett Favre had that holdout, or at least lockout, where the Packers moved on in 2008, and there was a big controversy about him flying into Green Bay, what he was doing. The Packers moved on to Aaron Rodgers. Well, Favre held out, and to Ted Thompson's credit, he didn't cut him; he kept him. So 3 weeks into the training camp, they traded him to the Jets. Ended up to be a third-round pick. That was one of the picks that Ted Thompson used to package up to get Clay Matthews.
You only get that kind of information here, ladies and gentlemen, along with Kurt Olivadotti drops. I mean, come on, seriously.
So the New England had the 26th pick, and they were looking for more players. So Thompson had looked at Clay Matthews for the 9th pick that year, and B.J. Raji was there, fell to number 9. They took B.J. Raji first. So then Thompson looked and said, if B.J. Raji's not there, I'm taking Clay Matthews. Clay Matthews had only played 1 year at USC, so there was a lot of tread on that tire. And so he kept dropping down the first round. So Thompson kept calling people. Finally, he drops to 26. And he trades the Packers' second, which was the 9th pick in the second round, the Packers' third, and the Jets' pick for Favre. So there's 3 picks to move up.
That's great.
And so they took him at 26, just at the time. So the Packers, that 2009 draft, just when the Packers were going from 4-3 to 3-4, they got B.J. Raji, and they got Clay Matthews. Now the ironic thing is, all the mock drafts that I saw that year had Cleveland at number 6 taking B.J. Raji, and the Packers at number 9 not taking B.J. Raji, taking someone else. And what happened was Rex Ryan took over the Jets, and they were picking about 15. And Brett Favre was their quarterback. And Brett Favre had an impingement in his arm that had to be surgically repaired. And he said, Brett, are you going to get this repaired? Well, I think I'm going to retire. So he called Rex Ryan's bluff. Rex Ryan said, I cannot deal with this quarterback. I'm going to cut him. He's $14 million on our cap, so he cuts Brett Favre, allows Brett Favre to go to Minnesota. So now he needs a quarterback, so they trade up. The Jets trade up from, say, 15-ish to 6 with Cleveland, and they take Mark Sanchez. From the U.S. So it's Brett Favre allowed them to trade up for the third-round pick of the Jets for Clay Matthews, and Brett Favre allowed Raji to fall because Cleveland, if they had stayed there, would have taken Raji. So those are 2 key pieces in that Super Bowl.
That's right, which gets us back to defense, as Brent and Mike have said, and we've been talking about this. our team members on this video podcast, you know, defense wins championships. You go back to '96, and as you said, so did tight ends. We'll get into all that as we approach the draft. How about these defenders in free agency? How much of an impact can they make, and how do they impact that draft strategy?
They paid a lot for
Za'Darius.
Za'Darius Smith, and the interesting thing about him and Preston Smith, so there's two Smiths, is you can use them as standing outside linebackers, or you can use them in the defensive line at tackle or at defensive line. So they paid a ton of money for that, but it's interesting that Za'Darius Smith was a target of Gutekunst last year. He was in the final year of his contract, and they were going to try to trade a fifth-round pick for him. The Ravens weren't buying that one, so the Ravens took him. He had a very nice year. There's a risk that he had one big year.
8.5 sacks or something?
So he could be Fackrell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Fackrell had a really good year last year too, and sometimes the stats, it seemed like Fackrell had that really good game against Seattle where he had 3 sacks. Right. And so it could be Fackrell, but you also have, and I wrote his name down because they had Milt Hendrickson was one of Ozzie Newsome's right-hand men in the personnel department with the Ravens, is now hired by Gutekunst. He's now his right-hand man. So at least you have, you know, knowledge is power. He knows all about this player. So they think he's got some upside, and they paid for the upside. They didn't get a discount with this guy at all. So if you play him outside, and he can play him inside, and he can play Smith, and Packer fans will remember Smith playing for the Redskins. He sacked
Preston Smith.
He sacked Aaron Rodgers for a safety in the playoff game at Washington in the 2015 season. So so you have those two. The Smiths are going to give you pass rush, and Adrian Amos is a very solid safety. The biggest indictment of Clinton Dix is after they traded him last year, they moved Tremont Williams to safety, and there was no difference. They were picking up guys off the street and putting them at safety, and there was no difference in performance than what Clinton Dix was doing.
Such a mystery, you know. It's like he made the Pro Bowl, and then I don't want to get us too far, but when you bring this up, it's astounding. From what we understand about Amos, he may not be dynamic, but he's always in the right place. So what does that do for Mike Pettine's D, especially if he wants to try to get after that quarterback?
Yeah, you have to have great cornerbacks for Pettine's defense, and you have to have really big defensive linemen who can stuff the run, and you need pass rush from the linebacker or defensive end spot. He couldn't get it from Matthews or Perry last year. He got it a little bit from Fackrell. I don't think Fackrell is very poor against the run. He's improving, but he has been poor. So I think you rotate him in, and you rotate these guys in. What the last guy they signed, but I think Amos is going to be very good. You just need someone solid there. And in the NFL now, the whole thing is, can you disguise the defense to fool the quarterback? You can't fool Rodgers, you can't fool Drew Brees, and you can't fool Tom Brady, but you can fool all these other guys, maybe Mitch Trubisky. So if you line a safety up who can play corner, or what are they playing? Are they playing quarters, or are they playing because during the shotgun snap, if they're playing shotgun, that's when you can change your defense. And if you can move 10 yards, you can fool the guy thinking when he calls hike, the ball comes out and he thinks it's quarters, and he gets the ball and it's too deep. And you just have that little bit of uncertainty is all you can do with these quarterbacks and the offenses, because other than that, defenses, you can't touch the wide receivers anymore. So it's pass rush and confusion. That's pretty much what you can do with a defense nowadays. So another guy that they signed is Billy Turner, who started 11 games for the Broncos. He's an offensive lineman. He can play guard and tackle. And since you're only able to activate 46 players, you need to have your offensive linemen be able to play multi-positions. So I know I read in Bob McKinn's Football that he said that he talked to people and said that was the most overrated, worst signing. They couldn't believe he made that much money. But I think what the Packers did is they looked at does the guy have feet enough to work in the zone blocking scheme? Can he play guard? Can he play tackle? Balaga, when he plays, is one of the best tackles in football, but he's only going to play 12 games.
Right.
So he's not
injury riddled, right?
You got to plug somebody in. Turner's an interesting guy. His dad played for the Packers as a running back, and I want to say the mid '80s. So he's born and raised in Minnesota.
He's an encyclopedia, isn't he? He's unbelievable. Okay, these are the guys. How are they going to impact draft strategy?
Well, the draft strategy is going to be very interesting to see this year, because the Packer needs, I thought coming into the year, pass rush outside linebacker. Number 2, pass rush outside linebacker. Number 3, pass rush defensive end. Probably they need a defensive lineman because Clark, Daniels, Wilkinson was all hurt. They were all hurt last year. This draft is perfect for the Packer needs. It's historically good at outside linebacker, and it's deep at outside linebacker. It was so bad at outside linebacker last year that New Orleans had to trade their number 1 pick this year up to Green Bay just to take Davenport because there were so few of them. He wouldn't have lasted until New Orleans. This year you can get that type of player in the 3rd round. So you can get defensive linemen into the 3rd and 4th rounds that are very good. So Gutekunst gives you hints at what he's going to do. And down in Indianapolis, he mentioned that it's the deepest outside linebacker draft he's ever seen. That tells me that they might pass on outside linebackers at the top, maybe take one in the 2nd and 3rd round, maybe take a need, maybe on offense in the 1st round. Maybe I'm overthinking that. I don't know, but they need a running back.
But they have the luxury now, don't they?
They do.
Because of what they did in free agency.
They do. They're also going to need to draft one offensive lineman. And he also said at the Combine that it's a much deeper draft at offensive line than he has seen than he thought. So rather than reaching in the 1st or 2nd rounds for a lineman, there might be a good one on day 3, late day 2 or day 3 that would be just as good. So the other thing, and I've heard the national analysts say this, that safety is very deep this year. The Packers need to draft at least one safety. So Herb Adderley's cousin is from Delaware State. That would be an interesting pick at 30. But am I saying that just because of the Adderley name? Maybe.
For the millennials, of course, he's a Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats on Vince Lombardi's championship teams.
Top running back from Michigan State, and they moved him into
Isn't that amazing?
Safety, or moved him to cornerback in 1962 or 61, and he became a Hall of Famer. So it's interesting. They spent as much as they could on free agents, and I think the reason why they're keeping the tight end Graham is they can't afford the dead money. If they cut Graham, that would be $12 million of dead money. Right now, they're $13 million under the cap. They have to dedicate $10 million of that, allocate $10 million of that to the draft. So they only have $3 million to play with right now. So they're all in. But I think this draft could really help them because it fits their needs perfectly, where you can draft players at certain places and you don't have to reach. Never reach for need, but draft for need where you get the most value. And I think this is the year that it all fits. So they have 4 picks. They have 12, they have 30 from New Orleans, they have 44 and 75, all before the Bears pick at 87. That's 4 players they can take, and they can improve the roster. What will be interesting to see as I study the draft is, do they go defense at the top and really get talent, or do they go offense at the top and then draft into the depth of the defense later? That's going to be the interesting thing to see.
There's a lot to talk about as we go forward, and maybe we can get more into the strategy with 12 and 30 as to what they will do in another podcast, okay?
I look forward to
This
it.
man is raring to go. Once again, we are at Enters in Heartland. Tom Pippins with John Dodds. You catch this video podcast by just Google the Tom Pippins Show with the the key to this whole thing, John Dodds or TomPippins.com. Mike, our producer, and Brentley, our content producer, doesn't get any better, and we appreciate the opportunity to be with you. So we'll be back again. Stay with us, everybody. The draft is right around the corner.
You want to stop that one, and then so I can have a separate file?
Kind of felt like it was time to get into another one, but you all right with that?
How long was that?
That was right around 16 minutes.
Okay.